Hi there, I'm Andre from Peak Motorcycles and it's a beautiful day here in the Peak District. I'm here to do a first ride, for me at least, on the CFMoto 450MT. So that's the bike you can see over my shoulder. Now, I have ordered one of these. I ordered it on January the 6th, 2024. It's now the beginning of August and my bike has yet to appear, which is a little bit disappointing. Nevertheless, a gentleman by the name of Murray got in touch through the channel and said he had one, lived nearby, did I want to give that a go? And obviously I jumped at the chance, so he's an absolute gent and he agreed to let me ride his. So we're going to go and take this out, you know, do a few of the roads in the Peak District. There's no crash bars on it yet, so yeah, let's see what about trails. Maybe I'll have to wait until my bike comes to do that. Here we go, this is my first go on a CFMoto 450MT and I'm really excited. Right then, here we go. This is my first ride on the CFMoto 450MT. There we go, that was kind of cool. It's really smooth compared to my singles and my twin. That is really smooth. Right then, here we go. Very first thoughts. It's very low to the ground. The seat is very low. When I put my feet up on the pegs, I do feel like the pegs are very close to my bottom. Yeah, I know they do a high seat for it, and I think that's going to be essential for me. The other thing is, and I think I mentioned it just when I started it up, is that it is really smooth. Now, the bike that whoops. I'm going to get them out of the way. The bike that I've mostly been riding lately has been my 1250 GS. The 1250 GS, shut that. 1250 GS is many things, but smooth is not one of them. So yeah, even after riding, you know, the singles, my CRF 300 I think is pretty smooth for a single. I think the Cove is pretty smooth for a single, but compared to this really does feel smooth. There's very little in the way of vibrations that come up through the bike, and that is a real pleasant surprise. So one thing I've noticed as I'm riding along is actually where that top nav bar is. I mean, the windscreen is in its highest position, but that is an amazing place to have a tablet mounted. I mean, it's like having a tower. I know for my Cove 450 there's lots of options available for people that want to put a tower on and have a nav higher up. Even on my BMW it has a bar, but it's not that high. So I think for locating my Samsung Active Tab 3, that looks perfect. Another thing I'd mention is I'm only pottering along up the valley here because there's lots of walkers, but I'm in 5th gear from 28 miles an hour, and it will pull from 2,500 revs in 5th very easily. I mean, it doesn't feel like I'm at any risk of stalling. It's just chugging along. So that sort of bottom end torque, you know, if you're doing city riding, I can see that just being super useful. Now, it's not really a city bike. I think with that 21-inch front wheel there'll be some loss of handling, but this feels pretty good to me. Let's see what it's like uphill. Down to 3rd gear. I'm going to try and keep this below 4,000 revs because it's Murray's bike, but yeah, in 4th, even pulling uphill, and this is I think a 15 or 20% hill up through here, and it will easily pull in 5th. What we do in 6th? Yeah, that is even pulling uphill in 6th. Now I'm not on full throttle, I'm just giving it a very small amount of throttle just to make it do that. So that easily hits 40, 45 going up here, like climbing up the hill. Right, now let's see what this suspension is like. I mean, that feels quite flickable. I mean, it does have that big 21-inch front wheel, which is never going to be the nippiest of things, but that feels easy. The bike feels very light. I know it's not particularly light. I know it's a lot heavier than my CRF 300. That was an easy overtake going uphill, just on probably half throttle, not really pushing. Yeah. And I think that's something where my CRF 300 probably struggles a little bit. You know, it's only got that 26 horsepower, this has got, I think, nearly double. And you can feel it. You know, that really does feel much more capable and much more practical as an adventure bike. So the exhaust is really quiet. Now, I haven't been up at the top end of the rev range. I can see the red line's up at 8.5. But it's very quiet at idle. You know, it just purrs along. And even when you are, you know, under acceleration, we're going up to I think 4,000-ish RPM. It's got a nice sound to it. It's that 270-degree crank. I'll not explain that here, but if you look up 270-degree crank, it essentially gives you a ba-dum, ba-dum, ba-dum sound as it fires. Very similar. It's the same configuration as what's on the Yamaha Tenere. And yeah, that works really well. This is probably the fastest road I'm going to be on today, so I'm just going to put it in 6 and wind it up a bit, see what it does. That's up to the speed limit, 50. You know what, that's really comfortable, doesn't feel like it's straining. That's what, just over 4,000 revs, 6th gear. Feels very planted. There's a little bit of a breeze today, but not a lot. I'm getting no vibrations from the mirrors. Now, Murray's added the little wing to the top of the windscreen, but even looking at how high up that windscreen is, that is a lot more wind protection than I've got on nearly every other bike. It does feel like it's a long way away from me, and as I get older and my eyesight fails, I think I'm glad I've got a 9-inch tablet for my nav, because trying to pick something out that's all the way over there, it does feel like it's a long way from my body. I think I mentioned when I set off that I felt the foot pegs were too close to the seat. They are. I'm 6'1" with a 32-inch inside leg, and it felt more cooped up when I first got on than it does now that I've been riding for a while. I think I could still benefit from the high seats, so I'll definitely be getting one of those for my bike. So I think the only thing that I can think of from looking at this is that I'm doing 4,500 revs at 50 miles an hour. So if this was doing 70, that would probably be up at the upper range, right? That'd be 7,000 RPM, maybe a bit less. On 9,000 would be 100. So yeah, maybe 6,500. So I could imagine at 70 miles an hour it would be a little bit noisy. So one thing I think I should mention is what the dash is like. So I mentioned that where I thought the nav bar was quite a long way away from me, and the dash also feels like it's a fair way away. There's also quite a lot of small writing on there. Now I've got my contact lenses in, I'm 50 years old, and my eyesight is failing. And I wondered whether I'd actually be able to read any of that. There is a very small clock, and you can see that bottom right, 14:49, that says, I can see it's got 126 miles to empty on about half a tank, which if that is true, and it suggests a 250 mile range, that's pretty handy. I can see the battery voltage twice. I'm not sure why it's 14.3, 14.6 on the, oh no, there we go, they do catch up. 2 separate battery readings, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, those are also fairly easy to read. Just coming down through that gearbox actually just then, clicking down 6th, 5th, 4th, 3rd, it really is super smooth. You need very little on the gear shift, and it just clicks. So that I like a lot. Right then, so now coming up onto the A6, this is a bit of dual carriageway, only doing a very short section of this, so I doubt I'll really get up to 60, especially if nobody else is, so I thought I might have one more gear there. I don't. So yeah, 60 miles an hour, apologies Murray, that is 5,500 RPM. So yeah, I can see 70 being a bit noisy, but then again, riding any bike on motorway isn't fun. But it still feels super planted. You know, it doesn't feel like there's any wobbling around, you know, anything else with the bike that might give concern at speed. So one thing that I have seen on some of the online forums or the online groups about the bike is a lot of people have switched the front sprocket to a 15 tooth. Now what I don't know is whether a stock it comes as a 14 or a 16. My guess is that it's a 14, just for that low end tractability, but actually the engine feels like it's got lots of go. And the point I mentioned about the noise and the amount of revs you're doing at speed if you're doing 70, maybe by dropping down to a 15, that suddenly really opens that up to be just lower revs, and I certainly think the engine would cope with that. I certainly can't see any problem. So yeah, maybe I'll order one of those in expectation of my bike arriving. I'm sure a lot of people will say to me, "Oh, ride it as stock until and generally I do. I'd only replace things when I feel like there would be an improvement. But having said that, I think that on this bike, getting the high seats and getting the 15 tooth sprocket, if that is indeed 1 tooth smaller, then I think that's something I do from the off. I tend to like to change both sprockets and the chain at the same time, just to make sure there's not too much wear. But at the same time, if it's new, then I'm sure I could change the front sprocket and just be done with it. So I've already mentioned a couple of times about how I feel like the foot pegs are quite close to my bottom and it's a little bit cramped. I think a high seat would solve that. With this low seat, other than my knees being a bit more bent than I'd like, that's actually quite a comfortable riding position. What I have noticed though is I think if the seat went up a bit, then I'd also need the bars to go up a little bit. Not a lot, but if the seat goes up by 20mm, then certainly 20mm rises on the bars. Having said that, when I stand up, I feel like I'm reaching. Now I know there's a lot you can do with posture, but the pegs almost seem too far forwards to do that. I could rock the bars forward a little bit, but I think, yeah, certainly having at least that 20mm on the bars, if not, maybe even a little bit more, would make a big difference to standing comfort. You know, through these twisties, and again, I'm trying not to push it, but there's certainly plenty there, and the bike is super easy to ride, super lightweight. I think for people who are a bit short in the leg, and are tired of all these big adventure bikes that are hard to manage, I think this is going to be a bike absolutely to try. You know, I'm really impressed. I mean, I liked it when I saw it at EICMA, and to actually ride one and ride a production model, yeah, I'm super impressed. I just hope mine now turns up. Price wise, I think these are coming in at 5,600 in the UK, which I think now is about £1,000 less than a CRF 300 Rally. Now, I know they're not really the same bike. The CRF 300 Rally feels a lot more like a trail bike, this feels a lot more like an adventure bike, but they potentially have the same market, and this bike is £1,000 less. It comes with all the extra electronics which you don't get on the Honda. It comes with the articulated ends to the gear lever and the brake lever, which you don't get on the Honda. It comes with a nav bar, which I suppose the other one does. This has a much more advanced dash. It has the flexible mirrors, which are a step up. Yeah, I just think as a package there is a lot here that you don't get on the CRF 300. And I know it's Honda's reputation. I know it's a Honda. I know this is a relatively unknown Chinese brand. But then, you know, my CRF 300 Rally is made by Honda in Thailand, and it's made to a budget. You know, I've also had other more expensive Hondas. I've had a CB1000R, and the build quality on the two bikes is not the same. I think on my third ride out, the paint started coming off the frame of my CRF 300. Now, if that had been a Chinese bike, there would have been no end of complaining about, super thin paint, just the quality of the workmanship and so on. And because it's a Honda, everyone kind of overlooks it. They buy the frame protectors and they just, carry on. With the CFMoto, yes, it's a relatively unknown brand. KTM 790s do all right. They have quite a following, and yeah, a lot of people have bought those, and I think those are made by CFMoto. So I suppose in summary, I think this bike looks pretty good, and I think it goes pretty well. It's priced incredibly keenly for the market, for the adventure bike market. It has a low seat, which will suit some, not me, but certainly others. But that is something that can be fixed. So I think I'm coming up to the end of my test ride. I've just done a bit of a loop round out of Edale. We're riding over to the Yonderman now for a cup of tea and a bit of cake. So when I get there, I'll record my final thoughts, and that will be it. Now what I will do is, Murray said he didn't want to be on camera, but he has been riding my CRF 300 Rally behind me on this short test ride. So I'm going to ask him what he thinks about the two. I mean, he's done 350 miles on this bike before he let me have a go. And my CRF 300 has had the suspension done. It's got the Performance 550 ECU and a few other bits and pieces. So yeah, I'm genuinely curious how he finds that compared to this. I don't think they are really the same sort of bike. I think that is definitely more of a trail bike, and this isn't. But nevertheless, perspective is important. That is me done. As you can probably tell, I'm really impressed. I think that is a cracking motorcycle, and for that price I can't think of anything else that really comes close that's currently available. It is a different bike to the CRF 300 Rally, certainly. It is definitely more of an adventure bike, and it's not perfect. There are a few things with it, so it could still be lighter, even though it doesn't feel particularly heavy when you're riding it. I think I would certainly need a high seat, probably some bar risers as well. Could probably do some suspension tuning. I didn't talk a lot about that, but I was only on road, and it was quite firm. It certainly doesn't have the bounce that my CRF 300 Rally had on the stock suspension, but it's fully adjustable, so there's a lot of tuning that could be done. So yeah, I really like that. I really do. Now I just need to wait for mine to actually turn up. Now, I had been told that it would be coming. I really hope that is the case. So if it does, I think I've missed the summer for a lot of the riding that I would have done, but nevertheless I have the winter, so I'll certainly be doing some tweaks to it. Certainly I think maybe that front sprocket down to 15 teeth is something I'm going to try. Right then, I'm now gonna ride it back. Apparently I can go to 5,500 revs during the running in period, so I'm gonna have a bit more of a play. But yeah, I hope that's been interesting and useful. If it has, please check out my other content and maybe I'll see you there. Thanks for watching. I have just done the stop at the Yonderman, and I had a quick chat with Murray, and he told me that actually it's 5,500 revs is the running in revs, and it's already not far off 400 miles. So we are coming to the end of that anyway, so I can have a bit more of a play. Having said that, right now I'm still doing just over 3,000 revs. It's 40-mile-an-hour speed limit through the village of Wardlow. So there's a slightly quicker bit once I get into the national speed limit area and head down towards Monsell Head. But even that, in the 6th, if I open the throttle, that's easily pulling up the hill, easily to 50. You know, there's plenty left in there. So I have a 60-mile-an-hour limit from here. If I drop down one gear, you know, 5th has got, certainly feels like it's got some overtaking poke to get up towards 6,000 revs. You know what, that hits 70 really easily in the 6th, which, you know, on some of the smaller capacity bikes, that's not an easy thing to do, you know, to overtake something with confidence at 50 miles an hour. But it's certainly easy on this, and I think that's maybe the gap, right? So some of these 300cc bikes, the 25-30 horsepower bikes like my CRF 300, like the old Himalayan, and maybe this sort of 40 horsepower, 45 horsepower band it's just got that extra bit of poke that just makes, you know, doing road riding where you have to overtake when you're getting to a trail a little bit easier. I hadn't really talked very much about the brakes, but that front brake with that big disc, yeah, it works really well. At no point have I felt I've needed to squeeze extra hard. It's certainly very progressive. Haven't needed to try the ABS today, so I'm just taking the little cut through from the A6 to get to Monash. That's even in 5th, you know, and it's just got so much torque low down, and it's got that lovely sort of throb that comes from that 270-degree crank. It really is a joy. I don't know if you can see me in the helmet, but I'm definitely grinning. I just think that's really, really cool. I should also add that I'm just come off the back of 5,000 miles in 3 weeks on my 1250 GS, so it's not like I've been riding my CRF 300 a lot, and suddenly this extra 20 horsepower is making a night and day difference. You know, I'm going almost the other way, and one thing that has been crossing my mind is, you know, would I have taken this to Romania? And honestly, I think I probably would. You know, I would have had to make sure I could get my luggage on it and things, and maybe see what it's like fully loaded. 1250 GS it isn't, quite clearly, but does it need to be? There's a question. Let's see what it'll do if I could go to 6,000 revs. There we go. You know, I mean, that has just got plenty of poke, you know. 4th gear, that was just an easy, and this is all uphill. I mean, it's not a particularly steep hill. It gets a bit steep around here, but it's very controllable. I did notice the snatchy throttle a little bit just as we were leaving the Yonderman. I know there's been some reports of that, and apparently there's an ECU flash that gets past it. Up here, 5,000, yeah, just about getting 6,000 revs, and that's the running thing. So there's another 2,500 revs above that still to go. But yeah, that certainly has lots of go. So I think what are the competitors? I think the obvious competitors, the Honda CB500X, whatever that's been renamed to. That's a 500cc parallel twin. I think it comes with a lower spec. I think the build quality is perhaps similar. This does not have the Honda name, and the Honda has the Honda name. But I think if people rode the two of them back to back, I'd be interested to know which one they pick. So if you've got a CB500X and you have a go on one of these, I'd be very curious to know what you think. Right then, this was only supposed to be a short little bit after the main video, so I'll tag it on there. But thanks for watching.